Okay, let's get going. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome. For those of you who I don't know, and for those who are online, I'm Sandro Galea, and I have the privilege of serving as Dean of the School of Public Health at Boston University. It's actually really terrific to have you all here today. This is one of our regular symposia that we convene around some of the most pressing issues that affect the health of the public of our time. And it's really hard to think of a more pressing issue than the issue of climate and the changes in the climate and how those are going to affect the health of populations. So we're delighted to be able to host this event and to do it in particular coincident with Earth Day, which is coming up this Sunday. And as you'll hear in a little bit in a second, we specifically wanted to focus today on a particular aspect of climate change. This is a large issue, obviously, and in particular around how we can work with cities and with the media to advance what we're calling climate solutions. You're going to hear a lot more about the content from the people who are behind this day, so I'm not going to talk much more about content. Very briefly about the School of Public Health, for those of you who are not from the School of Public Health is deeply concerned always with understanding the social, economic, political forces that produce health. And our scholars and our students really are dedicated to trying to understand these forces to the end of finding solutions. You may have seen the school's core purpose, which is think, teach, do for the health of all. And we do that intentionally because our job really is to generate the science, generate understanding, make sure we pass it on to the next generation, and then make sure we are part of solutions towards creating a healthier world. And these convenings are very much a part of that. So thank you for being here and thank you for being a part of it. Before I hand it over to the people who really made today happen, I just want to say a few words of thanks. First of all, I want to thank our collaborators and co-hosts. This event is a direct partnership with the Pulitzer Center, and you're going to hear from John Sawyer, the CEO of Pulitzer Center, in a second. Also with several Boston University groups, the Boston University Initiative on Cities, the Boston University Innovate at BU, and the Sustainability at BU Initiative, and also with our colleagues at Harvard T. Chan School of Public Health at the Center for Climate, Health, and Global Environment. Thank you to all our partners and colleagues for helping us put this on. A thank you to the staff who made this happen. Any convening like this requires a cast of thousands behind it, but in particular I want to thank our Dean's Office team and our communication team who did a terrific job in pulling this together. Thank you all of them, as well as working with doctoral students in the Environmental Health Department. And a thank you to the Environmental Health Department, who really has been the group in our school behind this. And in particular, the intellectual architects of this day have been the Chair of Environmental Health, John Levy, and Pat Kinney. Pat is the Beverly Brown Professor of Urban Health at the School of Public Health, and he has a life of interest in this topic and a life of scholarship that really has generated some of the most interesting insights in the field about this. So we're delighted that Pat joined us a few years ago, and we were really delighted that Pat put this day on. Pat, where are you? Thank you.
Thanks, Dean Galea, and thanks everybody for coming. I'm really excited about the day. I just wanted to give a brief note about what motivated us to organize this session around the themes that we did. We sort of had four assumptions going into this, and this is the thinking that was jointly done by John Sawyer, John Levy, and myself. First of all, that the citizens of the U.S. and the world need to move very rapidly to avert the climate crisis. I think that's clear. Secondly, that cities and other regional entities are now, in many cases, taking the lead on this action, especially in the United States, in the absence of federal leadership. Thirdly, that health benefits of climate action can actually be are substantial and could be an important motivator of local action. But then finally that not too many people know about that, so we need to communicate about amongst ourselves, between the scientists, and the public and the city leaders about the health benefits. So I also just wanted to add my thanks to the Dean's Office, Catherine Ettman and Lindsay Marakfer, and also a couple of doctoral students, Lindsay Butler and Layla Hidari, who have been really helpful in putting this all together. Draw your attention to a couple of communication tools that are things that we developed in the last week or so. The students did some interviews of Bostonians at subway stops around Boston, which led to this piece that was published last week, and there's a link there to it. And also, John Sawyer and I worked together on an op-ed that was published last week as well that there's a link to somewhere on the slides. I don't know if I can advance this. Maybe I can. So that's sort of the map of where the student, you can see some little yellow stars where they did these interviews. And then finally, how cities are leading the way on climate change. This is an op-ed that you can't see the link at the bottom, but it's in Cognoscenti, which is a WBUR online publication. So with that, I'd like to bring John Sawyer up, who's from the Pulitzer Center, the executive director, who also co-organized this event. And John, are you there somewhere? There you are. Thanks. Come on. Thank you, John.
Good morning. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Sandro. And to all our colleagues here and at the Pulitzer Center for organizing this great gathering. The Pulitzer Center is a nonprofit journalism organization that is very much about collaboration. With the hundreds of journalists we have funded, with the dozens of major news outlets that have featured our work, and with the 35 universities and hundreds of secondary schools across the country that have become such a vital part of our mission to engage the broadest possible public in the big global issues that affect us all. Boston University has been a mainstay of our campus consortium network of universities and colleges, bringing Pulitzer journalists on campus and staging gatherings like this since 2011. BU is our first partnership with the School of Public Health and the first to feature a Pulitzer partnership with two different academic disciplines, in this case with the College of Communications. Our BU student fellows have reported from throughout the globe. The BU partnership set the model for similar collaborations with other schools of public health at George Washington, Bloomberg, Johns Hopkins, the University of Iowa, and McGill. It also led us into relationship with the Consortium of University Global Health, the association of 300 leading public health schools across the globe. For the past 5 years, we've presented panels of Pulitzer Health journalists at the consortium's annual convention, sharing their ideas as to best practices in communicating the complex realities of global health issues to a general interest population. We've created hundreds of lesson plans tied to our reporting, free to all, and have repurposed our reporting in ebooks, also free, including the latest Toxic Planet, a compilation of our reporting on the health effects of pollution worldwide. You'll find all of this and more at pulitzercenter.org. Climate change has been a focus of our reporting since 2009. At this point, we've supported 65 different projects for broadcast and print outlets, from NPR and National Geographic to PBS NewsHour, Lancet, and The Guardian. This year, we have major projects underway with the New York Times, PRI's The World, and Undark. I'm really pleased that two of our journalist grantees, Nat Rich and Joanne Silberner, will be on panels sharing their work later today. We often say that the Pulitzer Center is about finding people where they are, engaging them directly, and helping them see the connections between big global issues and their daily lives. In the case of climate change in cities, that's both a huge opportunity and an urgent necessity. I very much look forward to learning from the diverse set of expertise represented here today, and I thank you all for coming. And I think with that, we turn to Gina McCarthy, I believe. Thank you all.
Thanks. That'd be me. Good morning, everybody. I'm Gina McCarthy, and you're not. Just thought I'd wake you up a little bit. It's really exciting to be here. I want to, hi Gus. Sorry, I have to stop doing that because I'll be seeing everybody I know. First of all, I want to thank everybody at BU and elsewhere for pulling this together. I think it's a really important opportunity, not just for me to try to kick it off, which I'm more than happy to do, but it's a really important subject matter. I'm going to give you a little reason why I think it's still incredibly important to try to make public health better communicated. because we're pretty miserable at it. I've been trying it for decades, and I still, frankly, am miserable at it, but I'm probably better than most of you, so you're in trouble. You know, happy Earth Day, practically, by the way. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'm going to be doing a little Nessun kind of interview tomorrow morning for Earth Day that they want to show. And it's really interesting because I had to have the woman who handles some of these press calls for me call them up and explain that I want to talk about public health. They can't understand why. Earth Day is an environmental issue. Okay, that's an interesting concept. That's how basic the challenge is that we face today. That people don't even get that the environment is a public health issue. And then you move to climate change, and it's mind-blowing. That's got nothing to do with public health. That's about the health of our planet. And I spent decades at EPA talking to them, I feel like, about how EPA is a public health agency. And I will bet 3/4 of the people at EPA think I was a little bit off the mark, right? This is what we have to face together. And it's a challenging problem for us in terms of communication, but it's also a tremendous problem for us if you have really good science being announced by world-class scientists. And the best that journalism can do is to quote Steve Malloy from Junk Science on the other side. That's a big problem. That's not a balancing issue. That's not bringing the whole issue to the table instead of one person's view. That's giving equal balance to somebody who knows nothing and is funded by people who want to deny science against a world-class scientist that studies their whole life and represents the vast majority of human beings who know anything about the issues of climate change. This is annoying. The only good thing about it is that Steve Malloy was quoted very recently, and I'm very proud of this. He called me a scoundrel. Is scoundrel like the best word ever? So I've decided that if he can use words like scoundrel, I'm breaking out my cowboy boots and I'm wearing them everywhere I go. I'm running about 6 guns in my pockets. What the hell? He's given me a new life for all these boots that have been hiding in my closet. Listen, I've recently, I think many of you know, I've joined the faculty at the Harvard School of Public Health, and I am most excited about the work we're doing with a new center that we're launching called the Center for Climate Health and the Global Environment, or C-Change. It is really going to try to make the connection between public health and climate change, because there is no disconnect between those two things. And we have to figure out a way to make climate change relevant to human beings. And we have to think about the change that is happening in the world today that is absolutely inevitable, and stop bemoaning it, and instead figure out how that change can bring new life to the work that we have been working on for decades. How do we use climate change as the momentum to get investment in public health that we have been bitching and moaning hasn't been around since day one, right? That's what I want to do. Now, I'm not suggesting we don't generally bitch and moan, but do it in a positive way. Look at the opportunities before us. Because when I talk to people, they don't even get why I'm at the School of Public Health. They say, "Didn't you work at the Environmental Protection Agency?" I said, "Yes." And they look at me like, "Well, then what the hell are you doing in public health?" And I try to explain to them, well, you know, I've sort of been in public health my whole life. What EPA does is not birds and bunnies, polar bears. It is actually human beings. It's lives saved. It's less asthma attacks for our kids. It's fewer cardiac problems. It's cleaning up your lungs from tobacco smoke. It's all the things that we do together to make the public healthier. They have no idea that EPA does any of those things. And then you go and you talk to folks about climate change, and that's when you really don't understand why I'm at the School of Public Health. Because climate change really is about the health of the planet. Did you know that? I have been totally unaware of this fact. that it really is about the health of human beings and the people who live here that we love and we care about. And that's the challenge of communication that we need. Because I can remember when I was at the Kennedy School doing a fellowship right out of when I left the Obama administration, this young student was really distressed, and she came up to me and she said, "Gina, is it just too late to address climate change?" And I'm just not a dramatic person, so I felt really bad for her. I'm like, "God, don't start crying or anything, I'll die." So I said to her, hey, relax. I said, the natural world is incredibly resilient. I know you'll be reading from, John Holdren's One Floor Up, oh, disaster. Geoengineering is it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I said to her, relax. Nature is really resilient. It's amazing how you see life continuing to evolve in the natural world and how it adapts to everything we hand it. She said, "Gina, I'm not worried about the natural world. The planet's going to be just fine. Are people going to be living in it?" was her point. And that's when I began to realize we have a problem here, Houston. We have to think about people and how they perceive climate change and how we talk about it and react to it and integrate it into our life's mission. Because our life's mission as a result of climate change has become much more important than it ever has been before. Now, I am the last to think that climate change is not a public health issue, because to me, climate change is just like conventional pollutants. It is carbon pollution. CAHBON pollution. Try it yourselves. You'll get a hang of it. You live in Boston. Get over this. If you look that up in the dictionary, it does exist now. I've had one major success in my life. I've added a new word to the dictionary. Listen, we have huge challenges that we have to face. We have done well in public health, far from any success. We have been looking at, I have been looking at different studies by Lancet, and most recently there's been some studies by HEI that are really talking about the global burden of disease we're continuing to face in the world. And it really is quite remarkable today that we still face so many difficult challenges. We are still looking at pollution being responsible for about 16% of global deaths every year. That's 3 times more than deaths attributable to AIDS and tuberculosis and malaria. And you ask people, if you ask people, were they more worried about pollution or AIDS, I'll guarantee you that they're still more worried about AIDS and tuberculosis or malaria. And we have challenges that we need to face. And it's not just in the developing world where those challenges are more acute and where you can easily see that the distribution of the challenges related to pollution are certainly not equally distributed. About 92 of those burdens globally, 92%, actually are on the developing world where we have low and middle income being predominant. And of course, we all know who the most vulnerable are. It's the poor and it's our kids. And if we don't figure out how to address these challenges and how to get investments into those areas like we have before, then the burden of climate change will overwhelm all of us. Because the very pollution that's driving the vast majority of these damages is pollution in our air, which will go out of the system in a changed climate if we do things well. Because when you drive down carbon pollution, you take traditional pollutants with you, and when you drive down conventional pollutants, you will drive down the carbon pollution that is fueling the challenge of climate change. And we have to use those intersects. We have to connect those dots to make people understand that the race should be to address climate change, not the default. We should be running to look at a low-carbon future because it just happens to be the future that we have been trying to create and invest in all of our lives. This is not a struggle or a trade-off here, folks. This is how you save the planet and save our kids. This is what we need to be talking about. We don't need to be bemoaning the challenge of climate change or the fact that the world is changing. We need to just simply understand that that is a fact. We have to make it relevant to the same people we have been talking to before, and we need to use it as an opportunity to gather investment in the very change that we have been seeking all of our professional lives, which is to make people's lives healthier. And the really fun opportunity today is that it is not like when I started talking about climate change 25 or 30 years ago, when I was trying to get people to get their arms around an issue that nobody knew anything about. It wasn't visible, you couldn't see it, there were no impacts that any scientist would allow you to point to, God help us. None of that could be attributable to climate change. And at the same time, we had literally no solution to that challenge. Nothing. Well, stop denying the fact that climate is changing and start telling everybody that the change is driving a cleaner, healthier world. That the changes that you need to make to address climate change will be better for families everywhere. It will grow jobs. It will strengthen our economies. It will provide more stability to the world that Lord knows we actually need. And let's stop looking so mopey because nobody follows a mope. They follow leaders who bring them to a bright future, not one that says you got to run away from the dark one. And we have to learn lessons that we should have learned many years ago about speaking English, folks. Talking to people not about the uncertainties first, but about what you actually know first. Your idea of very, very likely is my idea of absolutely true. Can we meet in the middle somewhere? You know, I mean, this is stuff we have to learn to do. But let me tell you something. I know that we live in like incredibly crazy, uncertain times. And I at least had 5 people out there asking me how am I holding up. I think I look pretty damn good and these cowboy boots are spiffy. Come on, do I look like I'm on my friggin' last leg here? You know, I'm holding up just fine. How are you holding up? You know, my world is changing, and it's actually changing in a really cool way. Yes, we can all go through the drama of what's going on in Washington, and we live it every day. But aren't you just really tired of being tired? You know, aren't you really tired of being anxious, being annoyed and angry? You know, that can only go so far, and then people just don't like hanging around with you anymore. You know, I came home to see my children. They will not talk to me if I keep talking like this, right? They're not coming in and going, oh, how are you, Mama? You holding up? I'm like, get out of here. This is what we have to think about. We seriously have to think about not what's going on in D.C., but what actually is going on in the real world. Because I can guarantee you, having lived there for 8 years, there is nothing but a reality TV show going on there. The real world is here. The real world is what we make of it. The real world has challenges that we can't deny, but opportunities now up the yin-yang. Because the solutions that I would have loved to be able to talk about 25 or 30 years from now are not only here, but they're in the market. They are cheaper. They are winning. The last thing we can do is let the fossil fuel industry tell us, number one, that the climate isn't changing, and number two, that I can't make your life healthier and cleaner and more prosperous if we move away from fossil fuel. Because the solutions today exist in spades. That's what's making the Steve Malloys of the world popular. Because he's the only one that they can get to deny all of what I just said, which in the real world happens to be the truth, not just very, very, very likely. It is actually reality. So I am excited. I'm going to stop spending all my time talking about science being under attack, EPA being under attack. Everything's under attack except Russia, who attacked us. You know, I just have to stop doing it, and I want you to stop doing it. I really want you to stop doing it. I want you to stop thinking about what isn't happening in Washington, D.C., and I want you to see what is happening in cities across the United States. I want you to see that even though they're talking like crazy about getting rid of the Clean Power Plan, that the only problem with that discussion is that clean energy is happening without the Clean Power Plan. Do I think we need it for added investment in security? Absolutely. Do I think it means that the world has stopped and we're running back to coal because we're embracing it as the future? No, we're not. Renewable energy and energy efficiency are still going nuts in the marketplace, even in every state that's controlled by conservative Republicans. You know why? People like saving money. They enjoy cleaner air. They understand that pollution is bad. So let's tell them where they need to run to. Let's embrace the technologies that are there for us. Let's support cities and towns where all the action is, in states that care about these issues like Massachusetts, and move it forward. Let's go hug Mayor Walsh. Let's go give Charlie Baker a kiss in the cheek and tell him to do a little bit more. Let's do what we have to do to remember that we do have leaders out there, and they are leading. And if you lived for the last 25 years or 30 years and saw the change in the environment in this country, you would celebrate just how far we have come. And all of that has been on the backs of grassroots, not because anybody in D.C. had a bright idea. Not that there aren't bright people in D.C., or there used to be. Did I say that? It is important to remember that in the United States of America, it starts at the grassroots level if you really want to innovate. That's where change begins. That's where people begin to integrate the solutions and the understanding of the challenges. That's where it starts to grow so that states can then take action on the basis of already understood and aggressive action. That's how change happens in this country. That's what Earth Day celebrates. It didn't start because somebody in Washington passed the Clean Air Act. That's not how it started. It started because kids took to the streets. So as you worry about the world today, I want you to remember the Women's March. I want you to remember the Science March. If you weren't at them, then you missed a whole lot, because the Women's March was my favorite. It happened the day after the inauguration, and there were more people at that than there were the inauguration. Also very, very likely and for certain sure. It was massive. It was, well, I mean, yes. And so we have students from Parkland who are teaching us about democracy. Did you ever think that the unbelievable thing that's happening today is, as democracy is being questioned and challenged in Washington, maybe the spirit of democracy is actually growing? Maybe what you see happening in the world today is democracy in action. If you spend time with young people, like thankfully I get to do at Harvard now, you will see that the young people today are so invested in social justice. They want to change the world, just like we did, only they're a whole lot smarter. They know everything that's going on, and they will not be snookered, and they will not be deterred. They will take to the streets. They may not have our sense of style. I wish they'd get into tie-dye and bell-bottoms. It may happen. But they will take to the streets and they will show us what democracy looks like. If we tell them that the future can be bright, if we agree with them, I see change everywhere. Maybe not as a result of what's happening in Washington, D.C., but simply as a result of change that is always inevitable. And we need to stop worrying about the change. We actually need to embrace it. It is our chance to get investment in public health at a scale that is going to be sufficient to address the problems that we are facing today. But we must connect those dots. We must connect the dots between public health and climate. We must connect the dots between the solutions that we can embrace, and we must connect the dots and talk, at least in the developing world, where we have learned many lessons, that we're not going to ask you in the developed world to fix our problem of climate change. We're going to support you to fix your public health problems, the co-benefit of which is climate. Let's stop ourselves in talking about climate with public health co-benefits. That's not how we need to frame it. We need to tell them that they can bring people out of poverty today if they correct the problem of air quality in Beijing and New Delhi and Jakarta. If they can alleviate the challenges to public health today, we can have the opportunity of a healthy, cleaner world moving forward. That's what we need to celebrate together. That's what we need to envision. That's the communication that you need to bring to the table. Not that the planet's health is deteriorating. So what? Just that we can save the world, one kid, one family at a time, and make everyone know it's theirs. It's their world, it's their kids, it's their future. And I honestly believe that it's not just young people today who can make this happen. It's the cheapos that don't want to pay lots of money for energy. Let's go, cheapos. Let's go to consumers who actually would like products that actually serve the purpose they're intended without bringing you toxic pollution that's going to harm you. How about that for a message? That'd be really cool, right? Safe products, I like that. And I think the most important thing that we can think about today as public health advocates is that this is actually our opportunity to join forces with the larger healthcare sector, with the larger healthcare industry, because they can no longer step outside and not think that the challenge of climate change is all about them. They are some of the biggest greenhouse gas emitters, and they are the folks that need to be understanding the most about how you prevent illnesses and disease, not just address it after the fact. So let's work together. Let's connect the dots. Let's speak as public health advocates about driving change that is positive and effective. Let's get people to follow us, not run away from us. First message, right? That's the first thing we have to embrace. And if we do, things will be okay. We will be able to continue with the democratic process. EPA will survive. We'll actually have a world we might want to live in. We'll be able to work with the developing world to bring them the kind of out of poverty that we need. We'll be able to address the environmental justice communities that have been left behind in this country. And we will be able to figure out how we can get a notch in our belt that doesn't waver every 4 or 8 years. So let's keep working at it. Let's keep talking about it. Let's keep being positive. Let's keep recognizing that there are so many ways in which today is not just the most difficult of times, but perhaps the most hopeful. because as I see it, those children give me hope. When we start taking to the streets and we take back our government, then maybe we will begin to have public servants who actually serve the public. People that we want to vote for, who will do what's in the best interest of the country, not themselves in the next election. That's what we have to look forward to. And we will have business leaders that I am seeing that are remarkable, that understand that you can't simply have capitalism as usual, shareholders rule. You know, I met with a professor at Harvard Business School just 2 days ago, and we had a great conversation because his most popular class is a class called Reinventing Capitalism. He had 200 students in his class. Next year, he's going to have 400 of his MBAs in that class. That's over half of the MBAs in the school. Because you know what? They don't want capitalism with all of its failures if it leaves behind so many people. They are ready for the change that we can position them to be successful in addressing. So if you want to be a mope, go ahead. I ain't following you, and I ain't hanging around with you. I'm hanging around with positive people who understand that this is a time of change. It is every change means there are massive opportunities. I am grabbing them. You can too. Thank you very much.